Dr. Michael McKee spent years learning how to save lives. As a vascular surgeon, he repaired damaged hearts, stopped bleeding, gave people second chances at life. But on January 16, 2026, a Franklin County grand jury charged him with using that same knowledge to end lives instead. Not strangers, his ex-wife, her husband, executed in their bed with a suppressed firearm while their 2 babies slept down the hall. This is the story of a 7-month marriage that allegedly turned into a 7-year obsession that ended with 3 bullets fired in the darkness of a December morning. Before we continue, if you appreciate detailed, fact-based true crime coverage that respects the victims and their families, please take a moment to like, share, subscribe to Crime Case Voices, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. Your support helps us continue bringing you comprehensive coverage of cases that demand attention. The indictment sent shockwaves through Columbus. Dr. Michael David McKee, 39-year-old vascular surgeon, charged with 4 counts of aggravated murder and 1 count of aggravated burglary in the execution-style killings of his ex-wife and her husband. This wasn't just another murder case. This was a surgeon, a man who'd taken an oath to save lives, accused of using a suppressed firearm to methodically end 2 lives while children slept down the hall. On December 30th, 2024, Spencer Tepe, a 37-year-old dentist, and his wife Monique, 39, were found shot to death in their Wineland Park home in Columbus. Their children, 4-year-old Emilia and 1-year-old Beckham, were found unharmed but had been alone with their parents' bodies for hours. No forced entry, no weapon, just 3 9mm shell casings and a mystery that gripped the nation. The indictment charges tell you everything. Counts 1 and 2, aggravated murder while committing aggravated burglary. Ohio law treats murders during another felony as especially heinous. Prosecutors allege McKee unlawfully entered the Tepe home with the specific purpose of killing its occupants. This isn't passion. This is premeditated home invasion with murder as the objective. Counts 3 and 4, aggravated murder with prior calculation and design. This is the legal phrase for premeditation. The killer thought about it, planned it, made deliberate choices that led to death. Under Ohio law, this is the most serious murder charge, carrying the harshest penalties. But here's what makes this extraordinary: the firearm specifications. The indictment states McKee had a firearm equipped with a firearm muffler or suppressor. A basic firearm specification adds 3 years. But a suppressor? That adds 6 years mandatory time. A suppressor isn't grabbed in rage. It's a tool of stealth, allowing a killer to fire shots in a residential neighborhood at 3 a.m. without waking neighbors or children. The suppressor speaks to planning, to logistics, to someone who thought through every detail of murder and escape. If convicted on all counts, McKee faces life in prison with parole eligibility after 32 years minimum. He's 39 now. He'd be 71 before arguing for parole. Maximum? Life without parole. Death behind bars. McKee remains in Winnebago County Jail in Rockford, Illinois, awaiting extradition. His public defender announced he intends to plead not guilty. A January 23rd hearing, this Thursday, will finalize his transfer to Ohio. Columbus Police Chief Elaine Bryant was clear. "We believe we have the person responsible for the murders of Monique and Spencer Tepe in custody. This was a targeted attack. This was domestic violence related. Targeted. Not random. Someone went to that house December 30th intending to kill specific people. And domestic violence related, pointing to motive, to history, to a relationship that ended years ago but allegedly never stopped haunting Monique Tepe. Michael McKee and Monique divorced in 2017, 7 years before her murder. Most people move on. Monique did. She married Spencer in 2020, had 2 children, built a life filled with love. But according to investigators, McKee never moved on. And on December 30th, exactly 1 month before Spencer and Monique's 5th anniversary, someone made sure that happiness ended. The investigation was remarkably fast. Crime scene to arrest in 11 days. Arrest to indictment in 6 more. 18 days total. That speed tells you the evidence was overwhelming. Prosecutors don't rush unless they're confident. Grand juries don't indict without probable cause. So what did they find? Surveillance footage placing McKee's vehicle at the scene. ballistic evidence linking his weapon to the murders, digital forensics revealing possible stalking, witness testimony about a 7-month marriage that left scars deep enough to allegedly drive murder a decade later. Spencer and Monique weren't just names in an indictment. Monique Sabatersky was born October 14, 1986, in Chicago. She loved children, earned her master's in early childhood education from Ohio State, worked in daycare before having her own kids. Friends describe her as joyful, patient, warm, someone who made everyone feel valued. Spencer Tepe was born December 9, 1988, in Cincinnati. He became a dentist who genuinely loved his work, spoke fluent Spanish to serve patients, volunteered with Big Brothers Big Sisters, lived for his family. His whole world revolved around Monique and Emilia and Beckham, one friend said. They met online in 2019, married December 13, 2020. In her vows, Monique said, "I had quite a journey to get to you. Countless bad bumble dates, wrong relationships and waterfalls of tears. But it was worth every cringing second because it led me to you." Wrong relationships. Everyone who knew Monique understood. She meant Michael McKee. They married in August 2015. It lasted 7 months. Family describes emotional abuse, torment, alleged death threats that left Monique terrified enough to flee. Rob Misley, married to Spencer's sister, knew Monique for years. He told investigators, she was terrified of him, the emotional abuse, the torment. She was willing to do anything to get out. McKee had allegedly threatened Monique's life many times during their marriage. She escaped, divorced him in June 2017, rebuilt her life. She met Spencer, married him, had 2 children, found happiness. Then December 30th, 2024, 1 month before her 5th anniversary, someone allegedly decided that happiness had to end. When ATF agents surrounded McKee's Rockford residence on January 10, 2026, it wasn't luck or a hunch. It was the culmination of 11 days of intensive investigation that assembled evidence so compelling, prosecutors moved forward confidently. The ATF's involvement tells you what kind of case this became. They don't handle typical homicides, that's local police. But when murder involves suppressors regulated under the National Firearms Act, federal agents take interest. Using a suppressor in felony murder transforms a state crime into something with serious federal implications. At 11:57 a.m., McKee was in custody. He emerged without resistance, no standoff, no chase. He was handcuffed, read his rights, transported to Winnebago County Jail, held without bond on 2 murder counts pending extradition. Within hours, OSF St. Anthony Medical Center, where McKee worked, released a statement. OSF is cooperating with authorities. McKee was placed on administrative leave. Patients scheduled for vascular procedures were hastily reassigned. But McKee's arrest came from evidence investigators meticulously assembled. Wineland Park is blanketed with cameras, Ring doorbells, Nest cameras, business security systems, traffic cameras. Every movement potentially leaves a digital footprint. When detectives canvassed for footage December 30th, they found gold. Multiple cameras captured a vehicle traveling through the neighborhood during the critical time frame, that 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. window when murders occurred. The vehicle's route could be tracked street by street, approaching the Tepe home, slowing near the residence, turning into the alley behind the property. Timestamps were precise. Vehicle arrived approximately 2:47 a.m. It remained parked, partially visible to a business camera 2 blocks away, until approximately 3:52 a.m. 1 hour, 5 minutes. Enough time to enter a home, locate 2 sleeping people, fire 3 muffled shots, exit without waking children or neighbors. License plate readers identified the vehicle as a 2018 Jeep Grand Cherokee registered to Michael David McKee at a Chicago address. But it gets more specific. A camera on a residential garage facing the alley captured a figure walking. Dark hoodie pulled over the head. Light-colored pants analysts determined were khaki or tan cargo pants. The figure moved with purpose, not aimless wandering, not hurried jogging. Deliberate, controlled movement. Timestamp, 2:51 a.m., 4 minutes after the vehicle arrived. Investigators watched this footage dozens of times, bringing in forensic video analysts. While facial features weren't visible, analysts made determinations based on other factors. Height: approximately 5 feet 10 inches to 6 foot, based on reference points. McKee is 5 feet 11 inches according to his medical license. Build: medium frame, consistent with McKee's appearance. Gait: a slight favor to the right leg, a subtle asymmetry analysts could measure frame by frame. The figure walked toward the Tepe residence, disappeared for 63 minutes, then reappeared walking back. Timestamp: 3:54 a.m. 2 minutes later, the vehicle departed. On January 6th, Columbus police released a portion of the surveillance footage showing the hooded figure. The release generated hundreds of tips. A neighbor reported hearing a car engine idling around 3 a.m. Another neighbor, leaving for night shift at 11:30 p.m., remembered seeing a Jeep Grand Cherokee with Illinois plates. Out-of-state plates are uncommon in residential neighborhoods. That tip was crucial. It suggested McKee arrived hours before the murders, possibly conducting surveillance or waiting for the right moment. When investigators located McKee's vehicle in Rockford on January 10th, they documented everything. Specific scratches and dents visible in surveillance footage matched this vehicle exactly. Forensic examination revealed trace evidence: particulates consistent with soil from the alley, plant material from vegetation near the murder scene. Chief Bryant stated, "We have evidence linking the vehicle he was driving to the crime scene. We also have evidence of him coming and going in that vehicle." But surveillance wasn't the smoking gun. The real breakthrough came from ballistics. When ATF agents executed search warrants on McKee's properties, his Chicago penthouse purchased in July 2025 for $400,000, and his Rockford work apartment, they recovered multiple firearms. One weapon drew immediate attention: a 9mm semi-automatic pistol equipped with a suppressor. Same caliber as shell casings found at the murder scene. The weapon was transported to an ATF forensic laboratory. The process is straightforward: test fire into ballistic gel, recover bullets and casings, examine microscopic markings under high-powered microscopes, enter data into NIBIN, the National Integrated Ballistic Information Network. NIBIN allows investigators to compare ballistic evidence across jurisdictions. Every firearm leaves unique microscopic, rifling marks that function like fingerprints. No two guns mark ammunition identically. The 3 9mm casings from the Tepe bedroom were entered into NIBIN within days. Now investigators had test-fired casings from McKee's weapon. The system flagged a match. Forensic examiners conducted detailed microscopic comparisons, firing pin impressions, breech face marks, extractor marks, ejector marks. The preliminary conclusion: the casings matched. The weapon from McKee's property was preliminarily linked to casings at the murder scene. Preliminary because full reports take time, and defense experts will conduct their own analyses. But preliminary ballistic matches are powerful. They rarely get completely overturned. Chief Bryant was careful. There were multiple firearms taken from McKee's property, and one of those firearms did match preliminarily from a NIBIN hit back to this homicide. That's prosecutor speak for, "We've got him." For the defense, this is what attorneys call a big problem. Legal analyst R.J. Larizza told Fox News, "As a defense attorney, you want to explore as many avenues as you can in terms of defense. But when the murder weapon is in your client's possession, those avenues narrow considerably." The suppressor added another layer. If McKee possessed it legally, properly registered, he committed no federal firearms violations by owning it. But using a legally owned suppressor to commit murder is still an aggravating factor, adding mandatory prison time. Beyond surveillance and ballistics, prosecutors have timing. December 30th wasn't random. It fell exactly 1 month before Spencer and Monique's 5th anniversary on January 30th, 2025. For someone allegedly obsessed with his ex-wife's new life, that approaching milestone might have been unbearable. Domestic violence experts recognize anniversary dates as potential triggers. Birthdays, wedding anniversaries, divorce finalizations. These dates carry emotional weight for people who can't let go. If McKee had been monitoring Monique's life, The approaching anniversary might have felt like a deadline. The timing of McKee's movements that night suggests planning. Arriving at 2:47 a.m. isn't random. It's late enough for deep sleep, but early enough that night shift workers haven't started commutes. It's the dead zone when neighborhoods are quietest, police patrols thinnest, witnesses least likely. The 1-hour duration suggests he wasn't rushing. Time to enter, locate victims, commit murders, exit methodically. This wasn't frantic, it was controlled, calculated. To understand why Michael McKee sits in jail facing life in prison, you need to understand who he was before December 30th, and how his carefully constructed life was crumbling. On paper, McKee's story reads like success. Born in Zanesville, Ohio, he attended Bishop Rosecrans High School where he ranked 5th in his class with a 3.9 GPA. He played football, showed promise in academics and athletics. He earned his undergraduate degree from Ohio State 2005 to 2009, then was accepted to OSU's College of Medicine, graduating in 2014. He matched for general surgery internship at OSU Wexner Medical Center, then completed vascular surgery fellowship 2020 to 2022 at University of Maryland Medical Center in Baltimore, specialized training that opens doors to lucrative positions and professional respect. Vascular surgeons treat circulatory system diseases, damaged arteries, aneurysms, blood clots. It requires steady hands, intimate anatomy knowledge, life or death decision-making ability. McKee possessed those skills. He was competent, capable of complex procedures. But competence in surgery doesn't translate to success in life. And by late 2024, McKee's life was collapsing. After his 2022 Maryland fellowship, McKee moved to Las Vegas, taking a position with Las Vegas Surgical Associates. Then things went wrong. On July 5, 2023, McKee was allegedly supervising a routine laser treatment for varicose veins. During the operation by Dr. Andrea Eghtarafi under McKee's supervision, an 8.6-inch catheter fragment broke off inside patient Guilherme Schwanz's leg. That fragment was left inside the patient's body. Schwanz required emergency ambulance transport for retrieval surgery. Imagine the horror. Routine vein treatment becomes emergency intervention to remove 9 inches of plastic from your leg. On June 7, 2024, McKee was named defendant in a federal civil rights and medical negligence lawsuit over this incident. A separate malpractice lawsuit landed in Clark County State Court, serious enough for jury trial scheduled July 2027. Damages sought over $50,000. These lawsuits threaten McKee financially and professionally. Medicine is a small world. Word travels when a surgeon faces federal litigation. Hospital credentialing committees ask uncomfortable questions. Malpractice insurance companies raise rates or drop coverage. Colleagues distance themselves. Then McKee did something unusual. He disappeared. Process servers tried repeatedly to serve lawsuit papers in September and October 2025. They went to his home near Rainbow Boulevard, tried an apartment near Bermuda Road. Every attempt failed. A colleague told investigators McKee just disappeared. His Nevada medical license expired June 2025. He didn't renew it. For a surgeon, letting your license lapse isn't like forgetting your driver's license. It's career suicide. Medical licenses represent years of education, thousands of training hours, countless examinations. Doctors fight to maintain licensure because having that license opens doors. McKee let his Nevada license die. That suggests either he couldn't renew it, perhaps lawsuits created licensing complications, or he chose to abandon Nevada entirely, burning bridges as he fled. McKee resurfaced in Rockford, Illinois, a mid-sized city 90 miles west of Chicago with population around 150,000. He took a position at OSF St. Anthony Medical Center as vascular surgeon, obtaining Illinois medical license October 2024. Rockford isn't Las Vegas. It isn't a destination for ambitious surgeons. It's where people land when other doors have closed, when reputation needs rehabilitation, when starting over is the only option. But Rockford had one significant advantage. It's only 355 miles from Columbus, Ohio, a 6-hour drive. Close enough to monitor an ex-wife's life. Close enough to drive there and back in a single night. In July 2025, 5 months before the murders, McKee purchased a $400,000 Chicago penthouse. That's not insignificant. It suggests someone trying to rebuild, establish stability, create appearance of success even as other parts of life unraveled. McKee's dating profile from this period reveals interesting details. He highlighted meaningful work, hot yoga, global entry for travel, electric motorcycle riding, interests in art, design, basketball, football, skiing. The profile presented someone cultured, athletic, adventurous, a successful professional with diverse interests. But investigators noted something troubling. McKee's appearance changed dramatically between dating profile photos and arrest mugshot. Significant weight changes, visible stress. The kind of transformation suggesting someone under enormous psychological pressure. When you step back and look at McKee's life in late 2024, an image emerges. His career was imploding with federal lawsuits and malpractice claims. His Nevada license expired, professional reputation damaged. He'd fled Las Vegas rather than face consequences. He'd relocated to Rockford, a significant professional step down. He'd positioned himself 6 hours from his ex-wife. He'd purchased expensive real estate while allegedly planning murder. He exhibited visible signs of extreme stress. He maintained weapons, including a suppressed firearm. This is a man whose carefully constructed life was collapsing. A man who'd spent years in medical training only to face career-destroying lawsuits. A man who'd moved across the country trying to escape problems that followed him. And 355 miles away, his ex-wife, the woman he'd allegedly terrorized, was living her best life with a man who genuinely loved her, raising 2 beautiful children, celebrating nearly 5 years of marriage. If you're still watching, you're clearly interested in real cases told in full. Like, share, subscribe now, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss what comes next. Michael McKee and Monique Tepe married August 22, 2015. McKee was ascending in his career, recently graduated from medical school, beginning surgical training. Monique had her master's in early childhood education and was working in childcare. Friends who attended the wedding remember it as a hopeful beginning. The marriage lasted 7 months. Court records from their divorce, finalized June 15, 2017, in Franklin County Domestic Relations Court, cited incompatibility, bland legal language that covers everything from minor differences to catastrophic dysfunction. The divorce appeared amicable on paper. Standard property division. McKee kept their $230,000 Roanoke, Virginia home. They split vehicles. McKee had a 2004 Jeep Grand Cherokee and 2007 Jeep Patriot. Monique had a 2012 Jeep Grand Cherokee and 2008 Toyota RAV4. McKee was making $51,000 as a surgical resident in 2016. Clean, simple, done. Except it wasn't done. Not for Monique, who reportedly lived in terror. Rob Misley, married to Spencer's sister Madeline, knew Monique for years. After the murders, he spoke candidly. She was terrified of him. She was very vocal about being terrified of this guy. The emotional abuse, the torment he put her through. She was willing to do anything to get out of there. It was so impactful that she had to leave the relationship so abruptly because she was so worried. Terrified. Not uncomfortable. Not unhappy. Terrified. According to family members who spoke with investigators, McKee had allegedly threatened Monique's life many times during their brief marriage. The threats were specific enough that Monique repeated them to family, seeking support and validation. But she never reported them to police. Common among domestic violence victims who fear involving law enforcement will escalate the situation. Emotional abuse leaves no bruises investigators can photograph. No broken bones emergency rooms can document. It operates in shadows, in the slow erosion of self-worth that happens behind closed doors. Victims flee not because they're dramatic, but because they're genuinely afraid for their lives. Monique fled. She filed for divorce. She rebuilt her life piece by careful piece. And then she met Spencer Tepe. Spencer represented everything Michael McKee allegedly wasn't. Friends described Spencer as warm, welcoming, patient, a genuinely kind person who made everyone feel valued. He was fluent in Spanish, volunteered with Big Brothers Big Sisters, was devoted to his family in ways that made friends ache when they talked about him. When Monique met Spencer in 2019, she was cautious. She'd been through hell and needed time to trust. Spencer was patient with her trauma. He proved through consistent actions that not all men use intimacy as a weapon. They married December 13, 2020, in a private ceremony at their home. Monique's wedding vows captured her journey. "I had quite a journey to get to you. Countless bad bumble dates, wrong relationships and waterfalls of tears. But it was worth every cringing second because it led me to you." Wrong relationships, singular. Everyone who knew her history understood she meant McKee. Monique and Spencer had 2 children, Emilia, born 2020, and Beckham, born 2023. They got a golden doodle. They bought a home in Wineland Park. They built the kind of ordinary, beautiful life that domestic violence survivors dream about. Morning coffee, family dinners, weekend trips, the accumulation of small joys that constitute happiness. By all accounts, they were thriving. Friends described them as madly in love, still acting like newlyweds, even years into their marriage. Their 5th wedding anniversary was approaching, January 30th, 2025. Just 1 month away when someone allegedly decided that happiness had to end. Did McKee monitor Monique's life from a distance? Investigators examined his digital footprint looking for evidence of stalking, though most findings haven't been made public. But consider what was publicly available. Social media posts showing Monique's happiness with Spencer, photos of their children, posts celebrating wedding anniversaries, updates about Spencer's dental practice, evidence of a life McKee had allegedly terrorized but could no longer control. For someone who'd allegedly threatened Monique's life many times during their marriage, watching her thrive with someone else might have been intolerable. The approaching 5th anniversary, a milestone celebrating 5 years of happiness without him, might have felt like a rebuke, a reminder of what he'd lost or what he'd never really possessed. Domestic violence experts recognize this pattern. The most dangerous time for a victim isn't during the relationship, but after they've left and started rebuilding. When an abuser realizes their victim has truly moved on, has found real happiness, has created a life the abuser can't control, that's when obsession can turn lethal. When McKee moved to Rockford in 2025, he positioned himself just 6 hours from Columbus. That's drivable in a single night. Leave Rockford at 9 p.m., arrive Columbus by 3 a.m., commit murder, drive back, arrive home by 10 a.m. as if nothing happened. Whether McKee intentionally chose Rockford for its proximity to Monique is unknown. Maybe it was just where he could find work after Las Vegas imploded. Maybe it was strategic positioning. Investigators likely examined whether McKee made other trips to Columbus before December 30th. Had he been conducting surveillance, learning routines, planning? Here's what doesn't make sense. In July 2025, McKee spent $400,000 on a Chicago penthouse. That's 5 months before the murders. Why invest heavily if you're planning a crime that will land you in prison for life? 3 possibilities exist. 1. McKee wasn't planning murder in July. Something happened between July and December that escalated his alleged obsession to the breaking point. 2. McKee believed he wouldn't get caught. He'd planned carefully, suppressor, late-night timing, no forced entry, quick execution. Maybe he thought evidence would never point to him. 3. The penthouse purchase was part of maintaining normalcy, creating appearance of someone building a life rather than plotting murder. If prosecutors are correct, that happiness became an obsession McKee couldn't tolerate. And on December 30th, 2024, he allegedly drove 6 hours through the night with a suppressed firearm to ensure that happiness ended forever. December 30th, 2024 started as an ordinary Monday for Spencer and Monique Tepe. Spencer likely saw patients at Athens Dental Depot, the practice 40 miles from Columbus where he worked. Monique stayed home with Emilia and Beckham, managing the beautiful chaos of a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old. They had no idea this would be their last day alive. The family settled into their evening routine. Dinner, bath time for the kids, stories before bed. Emilia, at 4, was old enough to pick her own books and demand multiple readings. Beckham, at 1, needed bottle and rocking. The golden doodle needed walking. Normal life. Beautiful life. By 10 p.m., the house was quiet. Emilia and Beckham were asleep in their rooms. Spencer and Monique retreated to their bedroom. Maybe they talked about the upcoming anniversary, exactly 1 month away. Maybe they discussed plans for Emilia's upcoming 5th birthday. Maybe they just enjoyed the rare quiet moment parents of young children treasure. They fell asleep not knowing that 355 miles away, someone was allegedly preparing to drive through the night to kill them. According to investigators' timeline, a 2018 Jeep Grand Cherokee registered to Michael McKee left the Rockford, Illinois area sometime late evening or early morning December 30th. The 6-hour drive would take the vehicle south through Illinois, across Indiana, into Ohio, arriving in Columbus around 2 to 3 a.m. Surveillance cameras first captured the vehicle approaching the Wineland Park neighborhood from the north around 2:47 a.m. The vehicle slowed near the Tepe residence on North 4th Street, then turned into the alley behind the property. At 2:47 a.m., the vehicle parked in the alley, largely out of view but partially visible to a business security camera 2 blocks away. At 2:51 a.m., 4 minutes later, a figure in a dark hoodie and light-colored pants appeared on camera walking toward the back of the Tepe home. What happened in the next 63 minutes will likely never be fully known unless McKee confesses. Investigators found no obvious signs of forced entry. The front door was locked when police arrived. The back door was secured. 3 possibilities exist for how the killer gained entry. 1. Sophisticated lock-picking skills. As a surgeon, McKee possessed excellent manual dexterity and patience for detailed work. Lock-picking isn't as difficult as movies suggest. With practice and the right tools, most residential locks can be defeated in minutes. 2. McKee had a key. Perhaps he'd kept one from years ago when he and Monique were married, though they moved into this house in 2020 after their divorce. Perhaps he'd obtained one through other means. 3. Someone opened the door for him. Maybe McKee knocked, claimed an emergency, convinced Spencer or Monique to unlock the door. Maybe he posed as police or delivery or maintenance. However entry was gained, what's clear is that by approximately 3 a.m., someone was inside the Tepe home while Spencer and Monique slept in their bedroom and Emilia and Beckham slept in theirs. The killer moved through the house, past the children's rooms, past the living room, to the master bedroom where Spencer and Monique lay sleeping. The medical examiner's findings suggest both victims were shot while in bed. They likely never woke up, never knew what was happening, never had a chance to fight or flee. 3 shots were fired. 3 9mm shell casings were left at the scene. The suppressor equipped on the weapon meant those shots made minimal noise. Not the explosive crack of unsilenced gunfire, but a muffled pop that wouldn't wake children sleeping nearby or alert neighbors. Spencer and Monique Tepe were dead within seconds. The person who'd allegedly terrorized Monique a decade earlier had ensured she'd never celebrate another anniversary with the man she loved. At 3:54 a.m., surveillance cameras captured the hooded figure walking back toward where the vehicle was parked. 2 minutes later, at 3:56 a.m., the Jeep Grand Cherokee departed the alley, heading south toward Interstate 71. 1 hour and 9 minutes. That's how long the vehicle remained near the crime scene. Enough time to commit murder and leave methodically, without rushing, without panic. By 4 a.m., the killer was allegedly heading north on I-71, beginning the 6-hour drive back to Rockford. By 10 a.m., he could be back in Illinois as if nothing happened. Back in the Tepe home, silence. Spencer and Monique were dead in their bedroom. Emilia and Beckham slept on, unaware their world had just shattered. Hours passed. Morning came. Emilia woke up first, around 7 a.m. based on investigators' estimates. She called for her mommy. No answer. She called again, louder. Nothing. Did she go to her parents' bedroom door? Did she try to open it? Did she see something that will require years of therapy to process? We don't know. Beckham woke up hungry, wet, uncomfortable. He cried for his bottle, for someone to change his diaper, for the comfort he was used to receiving. No one came. The children were alone for hours with their parents' bodies just down the hall. Emilia, at 4, old enough to know something was wrong but too young to understand what. Beckham, at 1, unable to articulate his distress beyond crying. Around 10 a.m., family members who'd been unable to reach Spencer and Monique grew concerned. Spencer had missed work calls. Monique hadn't responded to texts. This wasn't like them. The family contacted police for a welfare check. Columbus police officers arrived at the residence around 10:17 a.m. They knocked. No answer. They looked through windows. No movement. Growing concerned, officers forced entry through the front door. They found Spencer and Monique Tepe dead in their bedroom, both with gunshot wounds. They found Emilia and Beckham alive but traumatized, having spent hours alone calling for parents who couldn't answer. The children were immediately removed from the scene and placed with family. The house became a crime scene. Detectives photographed everything, collected the 3 shell casings, searched for the weapon that wasn't there, began canvassing for surveillance footage that would change everything. As we continue, like, share, subscribe now, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss what comes next. 4-year-old Emilia and 1-year-old Beckham are the most innocent victims of this crime. They didn't choose their parents. They didn't ask to be born into a situation where their mother's ex-husband allegedly harbored murderous rage. They were simply 2 small children who went to bed December 29th in a house that felt safe and woke up December 30th in a nightmare they couldn't understand. Child psychologists who specialize in trauma know that what happened to Emilia and Beckham will affect them for the rest of their lives. Emilia, at 4, will likely remember pieces of that morning. Not clearly, perhaps. Not with adult comprehension. But trauma burns itself into memory even when young minds can't fully process what's happening. She'll remember calling for mommy and getting no answer. She'll remember the fear of being alone for hours. She'll remember police breaking down the door, strange men in uniforms invading her home. She'll remember being carried out by people she didn't know, taken from everything familiar. Beckham, at 1, likely won't retain conscious memories. But trauma affects even pre-verbal children. The hours of crying without comfort, the absence of parents when his developmental stage required constant care, all of that creates attachment trauma that can affect his ability to trust caregivers and feel secure. The children were placed with family immediately. Rob and Madeline Misley, Spencer's sister and her husband, took custody. The Misleys live in Columbus and were already part of the children's lives. Emilia knew her aunt and uncle. They were familiar, safe, loved. But familiar doesn't replace mommy and daddy. Someone had to tell 4-year-old Emilia that her parents weren't coming back. How do you explain death to a child that age? Child psychologists recommend simple, honest language. Mommy and daddy died. That means their bodies stopped working and they can't come back. It's not your fault. Nothing you did made this happen. But even with age-appropriate explanations, 4-year-olds struggle to grasp permanence. For months, maybe years, Emilia might ask when mommy is coming home. She might save drawings to show daddy later. She might have tantrums when the reality hits again that they're really not coming back. Beckham is too young to understand now. But as he grows, as he starts asking questions about his parents, the Misleys will have to explain. They'll show him photos of Spencer and Monique, tell him stories about parents he won't remember, help him construct an identity that includes being the child of murder victims. A GoFundMe created shortly after the murders raised nearly $170,000 to support the children. That money will go toward their care, therapy, education, everything Spencer and Monique would have provided if they'd lived. On January 11, 2026, over 1,000 people attended Spencer and Monique's funeral at Scodinger Northwest Funeral Home. Emilia and Beckham were there, 4 years old and 1-year-old, saying goodbye to parents they should have had for decades more. As they grow older, they'll ask questions. Children always do. They'll want to know about their parents, about what happened, about why. The Misleys, along with therapists, will make difficult decisions about what to share and when. Most experts recommend age-appropriate honesty. Lies and evasions tend to backfire. But how do you explain to a child that their mother's ex-husband allegedly murdered their parents? How do you help them understand domestic violence, obsession, rage? Emilia and Beckham will have to grow up knowing their parents were murdered. They'll navigate school where other kids might whisper, might Google their names and find articles. They'll develop identities that incorporate being the Tepe kids, the children whose parents' murders made national news. Legally, the children are Spencer and Monique's heirs. The house, savings, life insurance, all belongs to them. Estate matters in murder cases get complicated, but the Mislas likely have legal guardianship, managing the children's assets until they reach adulthood. Other children will grow up with intact families. They'll have parents for first days of school, soccer games, proms, graduations. Emilia and Beckham won't have that. They'll have the Mislas, who love them and will do everything possible to give them good lives. They'll have extended family, but it won't be the same. Therapists will work with them for years. Play therapy for Emilia to process trauma. Attachment therapy for Beckham to help him bond with caregivers. Family therapy to help the Mislas navigate raising traumatized children. Grief counseling as they move through developmental stages and understand loss more deeply. When McKee's trial happens, likely in 2027, Emilia will be 7. Beckham will be 4. Will they attend? Should they? Most child advocates recommend against young children attending trials. The testimony is graphic. Crime scene photos are disturbing. The adversarial process is confusing. If McKee is convicted and sentenced to life in prison, Emilia and Beckham will grow up knowing the person who killed their parents was held accountable. That matters. It won't bring their parents back, but it will give them the knowledge that their parents' lives mattered enough for society to punish their killer. Emilia has 4 years of memories with her parents. Not many, but some. She'll remember mommy baking cookies, daddy reading bedtime stories, family dinners, Christmas 2024 just 5 days before the murders. Beckham has almost nothing. At 1, when his parents died, he'll grow up knowing them only through photographs and stories. The Mislas will tell them stories. Your daddy was the funniest person. He made everyone laugh. Your mommy loved baking. She made the best cakes. They were so in love. But stories aren't the same as memories. Emilia and Beckham represent the true cost of this crime. Not just the lives taken, though those matter immensely, but the lives forever altered. 2 children who will grow up with a hole in their hearts that nothing can fill, asking questions that have no good answers, carrying trauma that therapy can ease but never eliminate. When this case goes to trial, 12 Franklin County residents will face an extraordinary responsibility. They'll evaluate evidence, assess witness credibility, apply the legal standard of beyond a reasonable doubt, and decide whether Michael McKee spends the rest of his life in prison. Prosecutors have assembled what attorneys call a layered case. Multiple independent lines of evidence that, together, create a compelling narrative of guilt. Multiple cameras captured a vehicle identified as McKee's Jeep Grand Cherokee traveling through Wineland Park during the murder timeframe. License plate readers confirmed the vehicle was registered to McKee. The vehicle arrived approximately 2:47 a.m., parked near the Tepe home, and departed 3:52 a.m. Additional footage shows a figure in a dark hoodie and light-colored pants walking toward the Tepe residence at 2:51 a.m. and returning at 3:54 a.m. Police believe McKee was that figure based on height, build, and gait analysis. This is powerful circumstantial evidence placing McKee at the scene during the murders. The defense will argue you can't definitively identify someone from body type and walking pattern. They'll suggest the vehicle could have been borrowed or stolen. But combined with other evidence, this surveillance becomes extremely difficult to explain innocently. A weapon recovered from McKee's property was preliminarily matched through knee-beam to the 3 9mm shell casings found at the murder scene. This is direct physical evidence connecting McKee's gun to the crime. Ballistic matching compares microscopic markings left on ammunition by a firearm's barrel and firing mechanism. Like fingerprints, these markings are unique to each weapon. The match means the same gun fired both the test rounds and the crime scene casings. This is as close to a smoking gun as prosecutors get. The murder weapon was in the defendant's possession. The defense will hire ballistics experts to dispute the match, questioning the certainty. But even if they raise questions, the fact remains that a weapon linked to the murders was found in McKee's possession. Prosecutors have abundant motive evidence through witness testimony about McKee's allegedly abusive relationship with Monique and her documented fear of him. Rob Misley will testify that Monique was terrified of McKee, that he allegedly threatened her life many times during their marriage. Family members will corroborate this testimony. This isn't required for conviction, but juries want to understand why. Testimony about alleged abuse and threats provides a compelling explanation for why McKee might murder his ex-wife years after divorce. McKee lived in Rockford, Illinois, just 355 miles from Columbus, a 6-hour drive. He had means to travel to Columbus, commit murders, and return. His work schedule as a surgeon gave him flexibility. Prosecutors can show McKee had both proximity and flexibility to be in Columbus that night. 6 hours is drivable in an evening. Leave at 9 p.m., arrive at 3 a.m., commit murders, leave at 4 a.m., arrive home by 10 a.m. The use of a suppressor demonstrates planning and consciousness of guilt. You don't equip a firearm with a silencing device unless you plan to use it where noise would be problematic. The suppressor allowed McKee to fire 3 shots in a residential neighborhood at 3 a.m. without waking neighbors or children. The suppressor is powerful evidence of premeditation. It shows McKee thought through the mechanics of committing murder without detection. Pulling all layers together, prosecutors will tell jurors a story. Michael McKee and Monique married in 2015. For 7 months, he allegedly abused her, threatened her, terrified her. She rebuilt her life, married Spencer, had 2 children, found happiness. But McKee never let go. When her 5th anniversary approached, his rage became action. He drove 6 hours from Rockford with a suppressed firearm. He entered her home at 2:47 a.m. He executed Monique and Spencer while their children slept. He left at 3:52 a.m. Cameras captured his vehicle. His weapon left shell casings. Michael McKee murdered his ex-wife because he couldn't accept that she'd moved on. That's a compelling narrative with motive, means, opportunity, supported by physical evidence and witness testimony. Defense attorneys will challenge every element. They'll question surveillance identification. They'll dispute the ballistic match. They'll explore alternative explanations. The surveillance doesn't definitively show our client. You can't convict based on looks about right identification from grainy footage. But combined with the vehicle identification and ballistic evidence, the identification is solid. Ballistic matching has error rates. Our expert reached different conclusions. But forensic examiners have decades of experience. The Nebine match is preliminary because full reports take time, not because there's doubt. Even if our client's vehicle was near the scene, someone else could have been driving it. Someone else could have had access to the weapon. But who? Name that person. Show evidence someone else had access at precisely the time of these murders. Prosecutors must prove guilt beyond reasonable doubt. That's a high standard. Beyond a reasonable doubt doesn't mean 100% certain. It means doubt based on reason, on evidence, on logic. Defense doesn't have to prove innocence. They only need to create reasonable doubt, to make jurors uncertain whether prosecutors have proven every element. Based solely on what we know publicly, the prosecution's case looks strong. The combination of surveillance, ballistics, motive, and opportunity creates a compelling narrative that would be difficult for a defense team to overcome. The defense's best hope is probably attacking the ballistic evidence. But even then, they still have to explain the surveillance footage showing his vehicle at the scene. Given the strength of evidence, McKee's attorneys might advise him to consider a plea. In exchange for pleading guilty and avoiding trial, prosecutors might offer life with parole eligibility instead of life without parole. But plea deals require both sides to compromise. The Tepe family would have to agree. McKee would have to admit guilt. We'll know more as the case progresses. Plea negotiations typically occur after discovery is complete and both sides have assessed the evidence. When we talk about justice in a case like this, what do we actually mean? For Spencer's parents, Tim and Yvonne, justice might mean McKee spending the rest of his life in prison. For Monique's parents, Ignatius and Nareda, justice might mean McKee publicly admitting what he did. For Emilia and Beckham, justice might mean understanding years from now that the person who killed their parents was held accountable. But here's the truth. No verdict brings Spencer and Monique back. No sentence restores what Emilia and Beckham lost. No guilty verdict heals trauma or fills the void. The criminal justice system can provide accountability. It can remove dangerous people from society. It can send a message that domestic violence and murder won't be tolerated. But it can't provide restoration. Can't undo harm. If McKee is convicted, the system will provide accountability, a public determination that he murdered Spencer and Monique Tepe. It will provide incapacitation, McKee removed from society, unable to harm anyone else. It will provide deterrence. The sentence sends a message to others who might consider similar acts. It will provide closure. The Tepe family can begin processing grief without uncertainty of an open case. But the system has limitations. Can't heal trauma. Emilia and Beckham will need therapy regardless of what happens to McKee. It can't address root causes. Why do some people become so obsessed they commit murder? What could have been done differently in 2017 when Monique fled? This case isn't just about one man allegedly murdering his ex-wife. It's about a pattern of domestic violence that escalates over time, about victims who escape only to remain in danger. Consider these statistics. Approximately 1 in 4 women experience severe intimate partner violence. The presence of a gun in domestic violence situations increases homicide risk by 500%. Domestic violence homicides most likely occur when the victim is leaving or has recently left the relationship. These aren't just statistics. They're Monique. They're countless women who escape abusive relationships only to be killed by ex-partners who can't let go. Monique did everything right. She left after 7 months. She divorced McKee. She rebuilt her life. She found genuine love. And still, if prosecutors are correct, her ex-husband drove 6 hours with a suppressed firearm to murder her. What's the lesson? That leaving isn't enough? That's too depressing. But it points to systemic failures in how we handle domestic violence. We don't track abusers effectively. McKee allegedly threatened Monique's life many times, but she never reported it to police. Without reports, there's no official record, no restraining order, no way for the system to intervene. We don't monitor divorced abusers. Once divorce is final, the system loses interest. We track sex offenders, but not domestic violence abusers. We don't restrict firearm access adequately. McKee owned multiple firearms, including a suppressor despite allegedly threatening his ex-wife repeatedly. But because those threats were never reported, nothing prevented him from legally owning guns. Looking ahead, here's the likely timeline. This week, McKee's January 23rd hearing in Illinois will determine extradition. Once logistics are finalized, Franklin County Sheriff's deputies will transport him to Columbus. Early February 2026 brings arraignment in Franklin County Common Pleas Court. McKee will be formally charged, will enter his not guilty plea, will be held without bond. Spring 2026 brings discovery. Prosecution provides evidence to defense. Summer 2026 brings pretrial motions. Fall 2026 brings continued motion practice and trial preparation. Winter 2026 through spring 2027 brings, if no plea deal, trial preparation intensifying. Summer 2027 or later brings verdict and, if guilty, sentencing. Don't expect resolution before mid-2027 at earliest. Beyond the specific case, there are broader lessons. Domestic violence doesn't end with divorce. The danger continues for years, especially if the abuser can't accept the relationship is over. Threats matter. When someone threatens to kill their partner, those threats should be taken seriously. Geographic distance isn't protection. Monique lived 355 miles from McKee. That didn't keep her safe. Children suffer most. Whatever happens to McKee, Emilia and Beckham are the true victims. They'll carry this trauma forever. The system needs reform. Better tracking of abusers, better firearm restrictions for people with domestic violence histories, better education about post-separation danger, better support for victims rebuilding their lives. All could prevent future tragedies. Could these murders have been prevented? If Monique had reported McKee's threats in 2016, would it have made a difference? Maybe, maybe not. We can only learn from each tragedy and build systems that better protect victims. It's easy to focus on the killer, his motives, his psychology, his trial. But let's remember the victims. Spencer Tepe was a devoted father, a skilled dentist, a man who made everyone feel valued. He spoke Spanish fluently, volunteered his time, loved his family with devotion that made friends ache. He was 37 with decades ahead. He should be watching Emilia learn to read, teaching Beckham to walk, growing old with Monique. Monique Tepe survived an allegedly abusive marriage and rebuilt her life with remarkable strength. She earned her master's degree, found genuine love, became the mother she dreamed of being. She was 39 with so much life left. She should be baking birthday cakes, celebrating anniversaries, watching her children grow. Their lives mattered. Their deaths matter. Their children matter. And if the system works as it should, Michael McKee will be held accountable for allegedly taking everything from them. That's not perfect justice, but it's the best our imperfect system can provide. As this case moves forward, as McKee is extradited and arraigned and tried, remember that at the center of all legal proceedings are two small children who lost their parents, two families grieving unimaginable loss, and a community asking how to prevent the next tragedy. Justice for Spencer and Monique means more than convicting their killer. It means learning from their deaths, reforming systems that failed to protect them, creating a world where domestic violence survivors can truly escape and rebuild without fear. That's the legacy they deserve. That's the justice we all should fight for. On January 16, 2026, when that indictment came down, it marked a critical step. But justice is more than paperwork. Justice is about accountability, about ensuring someone who allegedly committed a horrific act faces consequences commensurate with the harm caused. For the Tepe family, the indictment brought relief. Someone was being held accountable. But relief is different from peace, and accountability is different from healing. No verdict changes that Spencer and Monique are gone. But it matters because justice is about society saying, this behavior is unacceptable. These actions have consequences. We will not tolerate violence. The coming months will test the prosecution's case. Defense attorneys will scrutinize every detail, looking for weaknesses, for reasonable doubt. That's how the system works. Even defendants accused of terrible crimes deserve vigorous defense. For those watching, for the community horrified by these murders, for the family shattered by loss, the waiting is agonizing. Could be a year before trial begins. Could be years before appeals are exhausted. Justice moves slowly, carefully, deliberately. That's frustrating but necessary. In the meantime, life goes on. Emilia starts kindergarten. Beckham learns to talk, to walk. The Mislas balance raising two traumatized children with their own grief. Spencer's parents find ways to keep living when their son is gone. Monique's parents try to make sense of losing a daughter to violence they thought she'd escaped. And somewhere in a cell, Michael McKee waits. Does he think about Monique? About Spencer? About the children who lost their parents? We can't know his thoughts. What we know is that the legal system will provide him with attorneys, with due process, with every constitutional protection. He'll have his day in court. A jury will hear evidence and make a decision. If the jury convicts, if the judge sentences him to life in prison, that sentence will mean decades behind bars. Decades of waking in a cell, of following prison routines, of knowing every choice is made for you. Is that justice? For some, yes. For others, no amount of prison time equals the loss of two lives and trauma inflicted on two children. But you can hold people accountable. You can demonstrate that actions have consequences. You can protect society from dangerous individuals. You can give victims' families the knowledge that someone was held responsible. This case will eventually fade from headlines. But for Emilia and Beckham, for the Tepe and Sabatursky families, this will never be old news. This will be their reality forever. That's why justice matters even when it can't make things right. That's why holding McKee accountable serves a purpose beyond punishment. It's society saying to those families, we see your loss. We acknowledge your pain. We're doing what we can. And it's society saying to other potential abusers, We're watching. We'll find you. We'll hold you accountable. As January 2026 turns to February, as McKee's extradition approaches, we're reminded that justice is a process, not an event. It unfolds over months and years. It requires patience and persistence. For Spencer Tepe, who died trying to protect a life he'd built with a woman he loved. For Monique Tepe, who survived one nightmare only to allegedly be killed by the man who created it. For Emilia and Beckham, who deserved to grow up knowing their parents' deaths weren't meaningless, that someone was held accountable. That's what this case is about. Not just legal proceedings and evidence and verdicts, but human lives, about love and loss, about violence and consequences, about a system trying to make things right when perfect justice is impossible. The surgeon's shadow stretches long over 2 grieving families, over 2 small children who deserved better. Justice may come. Convictions may follow. McKee may spend the rest of his life in prison. But for a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old orphaned by alleged obsession and rage, no verdict will ever bring their parents home. May Spencer and Monique's deaths not be in vain. May their story push us toward better systems, better protections, better ways of keeping domestic violence survivors safe. That would be justice too, not just for them, but for everyone who comes after. Subscribe to Crime Case Voices if you haven't already. Turn on notifications. I cover cases like this, cases where the system fails, where families are destroyed, and where justice is still being sought. Drop a comment below. Tell me where you're watching from. Tell me what you think should happen in this case. And most importantly, remember their names. I will see you in my next video. Stay safe. Stay aware.